So excited to be joining you today. Our event is part of the St. Louis Teen Book Festival. It's sponsored by the St. Louis County Library, HEC Media, Educate.Today, and the Novel Neighbor Bookstore, hosting 40 of the hottest young adult writers. The St. Louis Teen Book Festival is 11 days of programming dedicated to connecting teen readers with a diverse group of popular writers. You can order all of the books from our indie bookstore partner, The Novel Neighbor. Their website is thenovelneighbor.com. They're also offering some special discounts if you purchase a bundle of all the featured books on this panel. So I'm so excited to be hosting All the Feels panel, which is a discussion of young adult romance literature and all the thrills and the heartaches of young love. I'm joined by two of the most popular writers in teen romance, David Levithan and Emma Mills, as well as two hot new voices, Robbie Couch and Lone Lee. Welcome, everybody.
Thank
you.
Hi. Well, first, let's meet our authors. David Levithan, the author of over 30 books for young readers and teens, including Boy Meets Boy, Every Day, the Dash and Lily series co-written with Rachel Cohn. I mean, that turned into a popular Netflix series. I bet that was kind of exciting.
It was awesome.
Just
it was wonderful to have a series with lots of people walking around in crowds in New York during the pandemic. Like we were nostalgic for 2019 when it was shot.
Well, David's newest book is the middle grade novel, The Mysterious Disappearance of Aiden S. He's also an editorial director at Scholastic. Thanks so much for being here, David. We appreciate you.
It's a pleasure.
All right, Emma Mills. Emma Mills is the author of now 5 popular young adult novels, including First and Then and Famous in a Small Town. Emma, I read that when you started writing First and Then, you were actually in high school.
I was, yeah, that is correct. I didn't finish it until I was in college. It was sort of a several year period, but I was the same age as the protagonist when I started it. So it's kind of crazy to think about.
I think that is pretty cool because, you know, we have a lot of teens watching the Teen Book Festival. So maybe if they have a book idea right now, it's nice to know it's never really too early to start your passion. Maybe author a book. And we're proud to say Emma lives here in St. Louis, which is where I am from as well, but not Lone. Lone is in New York. Lone Lee, the debut author of A Pho Love Story. I love how your website says you're an editor at Simon & Schuster by day and by night and into the early morning. You're a fiction writer trying to collect as many rejections as possible.
Oh, it's the truth.
What does that mean exactly for people that are like, what did she say with that?
I love rejections. It's like a badge of honor. It just shows that you put your work out into the world and you tried, you know, so I love rejections. I always tell people to get rejected because it encourages you. It adds fuel to your fire. It makes you really angry. And then you keep on writing and then keep on submitting. So.
Yeah, but I think it's good for our teens to know that are watching that, hey, rejection's part of it. All of these amazing authors on our panel have gone through it, but just keep on doing what you love. Just keep doing it.
I agree.
Robbie Couch, the debut author of The Sky Blues. Previously, his work appeared in the Oprah magazine, love that, and the Huffington Post. Two of my favorites. Can you even pick, Robbie, which one you're more excited about to be in?
It's got to be Oprah. It's got to be Oprah.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like as soon as I mentioned that I was published in I 9 times out of 10 get like, but did you meet Oprah questions? Or what's Gayle King like questions, which is always super fun. I was just an intern, by the way. So I was pretty low on the totem pole there, but I fortunately got to have some bylines in the magazine, which was pretty cool. And Oprah's lovely, in case anyone's wondering.
That is so cool. And Magazine's final issue, I know, was December 2020. So pretty cool. You got in there just in time to be cemented in history. Well, let's dive into the books of yours that we are discussing today. First up, David, let's talk about 19 Love Songs. Tell me a little bit about your book for the people that haven't read it yet that are watching today.
Great. So this is 19 Love Songs. It is a collection of stories, some true, some not true, some that you're not quite sure whether they're true or not, and I'm not going to tell on this panel. The germ of this came from the only deadline I have every year is that starting around the time that Emma started in high school, when I was a junior in high school, I've every year written a story for my friends for Valentine's Day. They will not let me off the hook. It's been a while since I was a junior in high school, so there are many stories that have come out because of that. And many of my novels, including Boy Meets Boy, which you mentioned, started off as a story I was writing for my friends that got longer and longer and longer. And so I wanted to take a lot of these stories, again, some true, some not true, and turn them into basically a mixtape of a book. So this is basically my mixtape of these stories that are about love in many different forms. A lot of them really focus on queer love, but there are all kinds of love in the book.
By the way, I love that you write your friends' stories for Valentine's Day. Can we be friends? Like, I want a Valentine's story. That is such a cute idea.
Thank you.
So like you said, there's stories that are written as Valentine's gifts for your friends. Some chapters are fiction stories and characters from your previous books, and some are personal essays. So how did you choose what you wanted to include, and what did you want the overall collection to express?
I mean, that's a great question. I really wanted to explore love in all of its facets. I mean, whether it is love you have for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or a significant other that does not want to choose a gender, or a love between a parent and a child, or a love, the true story, which I will say is absolutely true in the story, is I wrote the story of how my parents met, because I just love hearing that story. And it was really fun to sit them down and say, okay, tell me on tape what it was like when you got married. Their first date was to A Hard Day's Night, which is, I mean, like, they were bound to be married for over 50 years with that kind of first date, right? So I just love hearing love stories, and I define love story as a story about love, not necessarily a story that has to end with two people staying together for 50 or more years. I think any kind of relationship we have, whether it is romantic or friendship or family, we learn something about ourselves through. And that's really what I wanted the stories in the book to show.
It's such a diverse and colorful collection of writing forms and of characters. Do you have any favorite pieces or favorite characters that you revisited?
I mean, I love the story about my parents, and I'm not just saying that because I know my mom will watch, but it was fun. I did go back to some of my novels, and in particular, there are two characters from my book, Two Boys Kissing, Ryan and Avery, that I want to write their first 10 dates. You see their first 3 dates in Two Boys Kissing, but I kind of wanted to see how their relationship grew. And so there's a story in this book called Snow Day, which is their 5th date. So slowly filling in the blanks to what happens with them.
19 Love Songs has been described as a narrative mixtape. Even the chapters, I love how they're not called chapters, they're called tracks. Track 1, track 2, track 3. Did you have music or a soundtrack in mind when you wrote these stories?
I mean, totally. I mean, Rachel Cohn, who I write with, including Dash and Lily, she has to write in monastic silence. She can't listen to anything. I am the opposite. I have to have music blasting whenever I write. So I think that musicality by osmosis gets into my books. The most explicit one in here for that is there is a story called The Woods, which is basically about what happens when you discover that your boyfriend is secretly writing Taylor Swift fan fiction and has hundreds of thousands of followers because of it. This is not necessarily something that has happened to me, but again, I love the way that music informs my own writing, but also all different kinds of writing, including Taylor Swift fan fiction. So I wanted to explore that.
David, you never write to your teen readers. You never write down to your teen readers. You use a lot of literary, cultural references. Many might assume teens would be unfamiliar with, and you never shy away from the real struggles of growing up. So when you write, who do you picture as your reader?
I mean, I think honestly, I mean, especially with these stories, I really am thinking about my friends. I'm not creating an ideal reader. I mostly don't think about a reader, but if I do, especially the Valentine stories, I'm thinking about my friends who are by and large not teenagers anymore, although sometimes they act like they're teenagers. But I think that the thing that really defines young adult for me when I'm asked about that, and I think it's true of the work of everybody here on this panel, is we have to be emotionally truthful. I think that you sit down there and you're not really thinking about necessarily who you're being truthful to. You're just thinking about, I need to be truthful. I need to not try to pretend something is what it isn't. And I need to be honest, particularly because I know teens might read it. And that honesty is something that actually can help them and can inform all the stuff that they're going through. Sometimes they can find something in our books that they take out and they're like, this is useful to me.
All right, Emma, you're up. Tell me about Lucky Caller. What is that book about?
Sure. Lucky Caller is my fifth YA contemporary. It's currently available in both hardcover and paperback, so you can pick your favorite format. And it tells the story of a girl named Nina who in her last semester of high school takes a radio broadcasting class, and sort of a core component of the class is to put on a weekly radio show at their high school's radio station. So Nina thinks it's going to be kind of a easy walk in the park, blow off class. And of course that is not the case. And things go kind of terribly and comically awry. And there's a little bit of romance. There's a little bit of kind of exploration of Nina's friendships and her family relationships. And it's hopefully a lot of fun. I enjoyed writing it, I'll say that.
Well, there's plenty of heartwarming romance in your books, but they're often stories of friendship too. So do you see your books as primarily love stories or friendship stories?
I think David touched on this very well. I think I see them as love stories, but that's with the caveat that all friendship stories are also, I think, love stories, and that sort of different types of love can be explored kind of beyond romantic love. So familial relationships, platonic relationships, you know, in addition to the romance, I think are all kind of different kinds of love stories. So I'd say I like to touch on a little bit of each one of those facets in my books.
What character from Lucky Caller or your other books would you be best friends with? And who would you fall in love with?
I think in high school and even now, I've always been very like friend group focused. Like I love to have a really like a tight group of friends. So it's hard to choose like which single person would I be friends with. So in Lucky Caller, Nina's sort of friend group becomes the people in her radio class project that are all working on this show together. And so they're kind of didn't really know each other at the start, and their relationship blossoms over the course of the book. So I would probably plug myself into that group. They're a fun bunch, even though they get into trouble and there's always hijinks. And in terms of who I would fall in love with, I think as a high schooler, if I were plopping myself back down in my senior year of high school, I would probably fall in love with Jamie, who is the love interest in Lucky Caller. He's just a very, very sweet, very thoughtful. He's been kind of carrying the torch for the protagonist, Nina, for some time, and that always gets my heart going. So probably be him.
That's cute. Yeah, I know we talked about this earlier, you started writing your first novel in high school, you began publishing when you were in college, but that's not all that you have going on. You recently finished a doctoral program in cell biology. You have a PhD. That's right. We can all clap.
Dr. Mills.
Right.
Amazing.
So do you plan to continue writing YA, or how are you going to balance the life of a writer and the life of a scientist?
That's a great question. I will say, for the record, I first started publishing when I was in graduate school, so it wasn't quite in college. It was kind of as I was already starting my scientific journey. So I kind of am accustomed to the writing career and the science career kind of coexisting in parallel. Maybe if I wrote a book about science, they would intertwine more. But I would say, for me, I really like having two kind of disparate, pursuits. They kind of have more in common though than you'd think. At least I never really thought of science as being so creative when I first started in it, but it really does demand kind of a lot of kind of analytical creativity. And so to kind of be creative in that way during my day job, and then to come home and work in a sort of different type of creativity has been very good for me. I like it. I would say the main challenge is just finding enough hours in the day to accomplish everything that I want to do.
I think if you like both, you might as well do both. And by the way, my mom is a scientist and a writer. She was a scientist first, and then she wrote a book. So you just do both if you want to. Do everything you love. You might as well. Okay, Lone, it's your turn. Tell me about a pho love story. What's that about?
Yes. So here's the book. This lilac cover is something I'm obsessed with. But A Pho Love Story is about two Vietnamese teens whose family own rival pho restaurants in Little Saigon, California. And they've always been told to stay away from each other. There's always been rumors that they spread about each other. They really compete. One person adds an item to their menu. The other person has to add another item to their menu. So they've always been just told to not talk to each other, stay away, they're horrible. But then this chance encounter one night brings these two people together. And they kind of realize that they're both okay. Like what has, they've been lied to about like the other person is, there's one that it's an artist, the other is a budding writer. And they just fall in love with each other, and also these help each other grow as people too. I think they encourage each other along the way. So it's a rom-com, but it's also, there's a lot about family here because of course there's the family restaurant, and there are certain things that their families have told them that drive a wedge between the two of them. But I was actually thinking, like, as David and Emma, they were talking about love in all forms. This one also has love that is a lot about family. So
yeah, that's kind of unique for a teen love story to have the story kind of centered around the main character's family.
Yeah, that's so the thing is, like, I think when I was in college, I took this kind of this young adult literature class, and I did notice there was this pattern where, of course, it's about the coming of age of this teenager, because that is the basics of young adult. But in my life as a young adult, as a teenager, my family, they were always somehow involved. And I think in this one, especially my novel, it has a lot to do about the immigrant experience, specifically the boat refugee experience, because my mom and a lot of my family members escaped Vietnam after the war, and they escaped by boat. So a lot of that, their experience, their wants and dreams for the children, I think that was always present in my life. So that's how that kind of worked its way into this novel too, because it is about them managing their family's expectations and also finding what they really truly want.
So the characters were kind of inspired by your parents a little bit, the story.
Yes. Yeah. The parents are, I mean, I think the characters, they have two different sets of families. I think both of them, the families have in common where they do want their children to find stability, and they do love them. But one set, which is Lynn, who's the artist, her parents kind of want her to find a more traditional path. So they kind of push her into engineering. And but Bao's parent, he's the writer, his parents just kind of want him to find something, stick to it, and like have a passion for something. At least they're like shaking him, like you have to find something. But they both have in common where as much as they try to interfere with their lives, it's because it's rooted in love and their past experience of not having stability, but they want that and so much more for their children.
So those family expectations do kind of dictate their choices, the teens' choices a little bit.
Yeah, a little, yeah. I mean, a lot, sorry, not a little, a lot. But I think it's more of Lynn, she's an artist, so she's really sensitive, and she understands and have seen, the sacrifices that have gone into their parents' restaurant business. I think both of their parents worked incredibly hard to try to find a safe, world for their children. So I think the two of them are constantly aware of what their parents have done. And so that kind of plays into how they're trying to still find themselves, but also wanting to, in a way, give back to their parents.
Well, it was a great story. Thank you so much for sharing about it. Robbie, you're up. Tell me all about the Sky Blues.
Yes, I would love to. This is the Sky Blues, although it's on the massive poster behind me, so you can just look at that. Shout out to Simon Teen for providing the cool poster. But yeah, so the Sky Blues, you meet Sky Baker, who's a senior in high school. It's the last semester of his senior year. And he's kind of in a tough position. He's dealing with some homophobic bullies because he's openly gay. He's dealing with a lot of pressures from family and dealing with family rejection. So the one sort of like saving grace that he has on his way out of his senior year is proposing to the guy who he has a huge crush on, Ali. And he's not even sure if Ali is gay or straight or if he's into him or not, but he's like, you know what, I'm going out with a bang, I'm gonna propose, it's gonna be big. But before he can actually propose and go through with it, his really long list of like super embarrassing proposal ideas gets leaked to the whole school in a horrible, homophobic, racist e-blast. So Sky has to figure out who did this, who the anonymous hacker is, if he's going to get revenge, what that revenge will look like. And yeah, if I keep talking, I'm going to give away spoilers, so I'm going to shut up. But is a story about a chosen family, and similar to what David was talking about and Emma and others, there's a lot of themes that deal with the power of friendship and how instrumental friends can be in that period of your life, and relying on the ties that you have, especially when you're newly out and navigating the world as a freshly out queer person. I think friends are so critical in that period of your time. So,
well, Sky's story is a romance with LGBTQ characters, but it's not necessarily a coming out story. What did you want Sky's journey to look like to other LGBTQ teens or any other teen readers?
Yeah, so I have gotten this question before where the insinuation is sort of like that I'm anti-coming out stories or something. I'm totally not anti-coming out stories. I think coming out stories are wonderful, they're great. But I do feel like sometimes people perceive LGBTQ stories through this sort of like niche lens, and sometimes the coming out experience sort of defines the genre in some ways. So I kind of wanted to tell a story that kind of captured the moments, the period after you come out, which I think so often in queer film, in books, in TV, it's like the coming out moment is like this big joyous moment, and then that's like the end of it, when in reality, I know a lot of queer people still have a lot of struggle and challenges and awkwardness that come after you officially come out. And so I kind of wanted to explore that period. So yeah, you meet Sky right in chapter 1, where he's already out of the closet, but he's still trying to figure out how he can sort of navigate this new normal, living in an openly queer body in a small town in the rural Rust Belt. So yeah, I kind of wanted to shine a light on that period of a young person's life.
And like you were saying, Sky's proposal plans, they're leaked online in just a nasty kind of internet trolling type of way, which is something that these teens, this generation, might have to really cope with. So do you have any advice for teens navigating the online world? Yeah,
I think that's such a good question. I almost want to flip the question and ask teenagers, like, do you have any advice for me? I feel like teenagers are so great in these spaces, and they've grown up with social media, and it's such an extension of their personality, so they can probably give me advice. But what I would say, if I did give them a piece of advice, I would just remind teens, and really all people, that our social media profiles and digital spaces are just sort of an extension of ourselves. And so it's really important to set boundaries, to have control over how you engage people or don't engage, feel to Black people who are not supportive of you. Like, you have control over yourself in those digital spaces, just like you have autonomy in the physical world. So I think that's always a good reminder for teens to remember that. And of course, if there's ever an instance of like violence or threats, or if you're being harassed or bullied, like, absolutely speak up and tell someone, tell a friend, a parent, a teacher. I think it's really important that teenagers know that as well.
Well, David and Emma, you have around 50 books between the two of you and millions of readers. Do you have any advice for our debut authors, Lone and Robbie? David, would you like to go first?
I mean, there's so much advice. But I would say the most important advice is that you want to be doing this for the long haul, that you want to have a career as a writer. I've never met a serious writer, who's gone into this, especially YA, just wanting to write one book. So with that in mind, just know that you're in this for a long time, and don't put pressure on yourself to be super, super successful immediately out of the gate with one book. Mm-hmm. Most of our careers grow from book to book. And I think the mistake that a lot of debut authors make, and the mistake, honestly, a lot of people talking to the audience now who want to be published make, is thinking that the first shot has to be it. When the truth of the matter is if you do your career the right way, which we all want to, the first shot is just going to be the first shot. That you will have many, many, many different stories to tell and occasions to bring things out to readers over many, many years. And again, Emma and I are both a testament to that. So I would say, as crass as it sounds, to play the long game. The pressure you will feel is going to be the short game pressure, but the real writers who you admire all played the long game. So always keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Anything to add to that?
Fantastic.
I mean, I'm honored to be mentioned alongside David. I think I need to specify that of the 50 books and millions of fans, I'm just like a very small fraction of that. Oh. It's like saying me and Taylor Swift have 19 Grammys together, or however many she has. I don't know the exact number. But I would agree, and I'm also I appreciate David's advice, and I would just say to enjoy the process, because debut is such a fun time. So just soak it in. I know the world is a little bit different at the moment, but definitely enjoy it. And I think a lot of people think that the second book is a bit of a challenge following the debut, but just, write your bliss and enjoy yourself.
I love that. So Lone, what's your favorite part about being an author right now?
I feel like because my book came out last month, just hearing from readers emailing me and tagging me on really beautiful Instagram shots. I'm so jealous. But yeah, hearing the impact of it, of kids who probably never saw a Vietnamese American rep or never saw a family like theirs in a novel. That is just truly something that just touches my heart completely. And it makes me so honored to do. Reader feedback.
Robbie, how about you tell me, what's your favorite part about being an author so far?
Yeah, well, I would totally second Lone's points. I think there's like no cooler feeling than like opening up Twitter or Instagram and getting a tweet or a message from a reader, or like an early, because my book hasn't come out yet, but it has because it's in the future, sorry. But there's no greater feeling than opening up an app and seeing a message from like a blogger or someone who got their hands on it already and it really touched their heart and resonated with them, especially young queer people. That's a very cool feeling. And it's also been kind of neat. There's been a handful of folks, adults who have been around my age, who've reached out, and they've been from similar towns like the one I grew up in. I grew up in Clio, Michigan. It's outside of Flint, and they'll be like, I'm from Mount Morris, or I'm from this so-and-so town in Michigan. And then we've kind of like chatted about very like weird Michigan specific things, which has been kind of fun. But that was a very surprising part of this process. I did not expect. That's been kind of great. But I would definitely reiterate hearing the feedback from readers. It's the first time I've experienced something like this before. And so it's a totally new feeling and pretty awesome.
I love that. Well, thank you so much to all of our panel for being here. Lone, Robbie, Emma, and David. Appreciate your insights and sharing your book with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
We
much.
also want to say thanks to the St. Louis County Library, HEC Media, Educate Now Today, and the Novel Neighbor. Don't forget, those books are available at the Novel Neighbor. They're doing curbside pickup. They're also doing shipping. Thank you so much for watching the All the Feels program at the St. Louis Teen Book Festival. Have a great day.